Hey guys, it's American Thinks. It's back at it with part 2. Grand theory of everything. You guys made my comeback. It's my most watched video in, I don't know, 2-3 years, something like that. Thank you for being patient. We're going to keep this thing moving. And here we go.
The year is 282 AC, and Lyanna Stark has a problem. She has just been kidnapped by the heir apparent of Westeros and taken to his secret tower where she is being used for sex. We are not given a POV in the books of Lyanna's kidnapping or the subsequent events until her brother Ned arrives on the scene, and at best the information we get from Ned's POV is incomplete and ambiguous. It is hard for us as readers to be certain of what exactly happened, and that is also a problem. To be clear, I am not trying to minimize the subject of rape. From what we can tell, Lyanna Stark was very likely raped. I mean, what are the odds that Lyanna is kidnapped and then has consensual sex with her kidnapper? Sure, it seems like the two had a magical moment where Rhaegar gave her some flowers, sang her a song.
Sparks flew, emotions ran high.
But does that really imply that whatever happened after the kidnapping event was consensual? Was it all even a kidnapping? Or an elopement? Stockholm Syndrome? It's like I set out to read a fantasy novel and create a theory video, but suddenly I'm questioning the real-life complexities of who or what I believe in real-life rape accusations. Thanks, George R. R. Martin. Thanks a lot. So if we're thinking of this as a kidnapping and rape investigation, I assume we're all quite certain that Rhaegar had the means and the opportunity to commit the crime. But then we have the problem of the motive for Rhaegar Targaryen's obsession with Lyanna, because unlike her abductor, Lyanna Stark is much more difficult for us to reliably profile for the purposes of understanding our story. But that hasn't stopped us before, has it? Lyanna Stark is the daughter of Rickard Stark and Lyanna Stark, the Lord and Lady of Winterfell, and she is sister to Brandon Stark, Eddard Stark, and Benjen Stark. We know that she was beautiful, slim, and wild, having a strong will. Her father even supposedly described her as having the wolf blood.
Oh my god.
Literally. He says it just like that. Wolf blood. There it is. But let's not digress too much. We're just getting started here. She loves horses and riding and winter roses. Long face, typical Stark features. So that's about it, right? Well, here's where it starts getting problematic. When we look at her family tree, we find it really doesn't go back very far, which is strange because we are led to believe that the Stark family history in the North goes back a very, very long time, almost to time immemorial. But both in universe and in real life, there is far, far more genealogical history of the Targaryen family, which has only been in Westeros for a few centuries, and very little genealogical history of the Stark family, which has been around practically forever. So instead of starting at the beginning of the genealogy and working our way forward, we'll have to start at the end and work our way back. The obvious answer to the question of motive is skin changing. We know that Lyanna's brother Eddard Stark produced several children with Catelyn Tully with a strong connection to their direwolves, particularly Bran, who seems to be the most powerful, and Arya, and possibly Rickon, who seems to be growing feral, but who we can only really theorize about since he does not have a POV. And then, of course, there is Jon Snow, who shares a connection with his direwolf Ghost, and who is Ned Stark's bastard. But actually, spoiler alert, is very probably Lyanna's son with Rhaegar Targaryen.
Oh my god.
And it makes sense that a skin changer might very well be able to ride a dragon, and it is certainly worth taking a chance on someone else's skin changing genes being able to stand in for dragon hatching genes. I mean, the Targaryen line is pretty much toast at this point, so it's not like Rhaegar would have a lot to lose, right? And a quick glance at the Stark family tree shows that they do not intermarry with Targaryens. Really, the closest they come is Sarah Snow knocking boots with Jacaerys Valerian. And Rhaegar is likely going to have little say in who he marries in any case, as his father, the Mad King, is likely to decide that for him. So, if Rhaegar is going to make off with a Stark of Winterfell for breeding purposes, there are very likely going to be serious repercussions. It would be necessary for him to be able to defend himself. Hence the need for him to become a warrior. There you go. The Rhaegar Lyanna Dragon Direwolf Ice and Fire theory wrapped up in a nice tidy package. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. The main problem with the Dragonblood Wolfblood theory is that it is formulated by A Song of Ice and Fire fans who have read the books and know that the various Stark children have manifested skin-changing abilities. Rhaegar Targaryen, on the day that he enters the practice field to become a warrior, and on the day that he kidnaps Lyanna Stark, would have no knowledge of the Stark children's abilities because they haven't even been born yet. And furthermore, the Stark children do not begin to manifest their abilities until they find their direwolves. And by the time Rhaegar Targaryen is born, direwolves haven't existed below the wall for centuries. In fact, direwolves apparently disappear from south of the wall around the time of the Targaryen conquest, or more specifically, around the time of Queen Alysanne's trip to the north, almost like the Starks didn't want to leave the opportunity for Targaryens to find out about their wolf blood. Possibly the same reason the deeper levels of the Winterfell crypts have been collapsed. Possibly the same reason Stark genealogy doesn't go back very far. House Stark has a secret that they don't want people to know. And if these waters weren't muddy enough, let's stir them up a little bit more. Given what we have just covered, it's hard to prove that the Stark children's skin-changing abilities don't come from their mother's Tully genes rather than from their father's Stark genes. From what we can infer, the ability for skin changing has been around for a long time. And the Starks have been around for a long time, being descended from the first men. They've been marrying lots of other families. Hell, even the Stark genealogy we do have shows them marrying a dozen or so other noble families, and the Tully family goes back to the first men just like House Stark does. And Catelyn has some red hair, which counts for a lot in the world of ice and fire. As readers, we know that Jon Snow is the proof of the strength of the Stark wolf blood. But again, this is hindsight. Rhaegar would not have a way of knowing this. In fact, if anything, the best example Rhaegar would have of crossing dragon blood with the blood of the first men to produce magical affinity would be the illustrious and enigmatic Brynden Rivers, or Bloodraven, who is the product of Targaryen and Blackwood genetics, which, again, would point to the Riverlands and not necessarily to the north. You want to take this even deeper? You all remember that evil old practice that the Northerners had called the First Night, where lords could bed the wives of their vassals on their wedding night if they chose to do so? Up to this point, I've only heard theorists pointing out that this would produce bastards to give to the others through the gate in the Night's Fort, which, admittedly, might be true. But in a world where magical abilities are tied to genetics, and the houses with the best genetics tend to hold the most power, a lord sleeping with his vassal's wife is passing on his superior genetics to his vassal's family, giving them the potential to have offspring with skin changing or whatever else it might be. This is much like the wildling practice of stealing wives and how wildling men are supposed to steal women from far away to bring better genetic diversity to their tribes. This right of the First Night isn't so much a despotic sexual privilege from a genetic perspective, it is a progression towards a more egalitarian society. And who put an end to this practice? Oh yeah, good Queen Alysanne.
Oh my god.
That's right. For some reason, the good queen, either advertently or inadvertently, stopped, or at least slowed, the spread of the skin-changing gene in the north, swinging the genetic pendulum back in the direction of centralized genetics, and therefore centralized power. But that couldn't be the only Targaryen practice to influence the north, right? Well, let's pursue the Stark family tree, shall we? Let's see. There's Blackwoods, Umbers, and Karstarks galore. There's Manderley Serwins and Royces. There's Locks, Glovers, Tullys, and Norries. A Flint and a Mormont, too. There's even one rogue Westerling, but guess who you won't find growing on the Stark family tree? Not one damn Bolton. Not one. In this egalitarian northern world, one prominent family isn't getting the skin-changing gene. You think that's a coincidence? You think that might rankle a bit, knowing that Starks would fuck their vassals' wives, but not marry any of your kids to theirs? You think it's any surprise that their sigil is a flayed man? Like, fine, we don't want your stupid skin-changing abilities anyway. And certainly the Starks haven't been inbreeding like the Targaryens, have they? I mean, that's certainly a Targaryen thing. That is, aside from half the Stark family tree being Karstarks, of course, and yeah, aside from Cregan Stark marrying Lyanna Stark, but that was, 100 years ago or something. Just an anomaly, really. Yeah, and then there was Rickard Stark and Lyanna Stark. Wait, who were they again? Oh, right. Those were Lyanna and Ned's parents.
Oh my God!
So let's recap where we're at now. It seems that for a long time, the social practices among the first men of the North encouraged the Starks to spread their skin-changing wolf blood to just about everyone, except, of course, to their northern rivals, the Boltons. That all changed about 2 centuries ago when good Queen Alysanne Targaryen showed up and wasn't having any of it. After that, the direwolves died off south of the Wall, and the Starks began inbreeding, perhaps not exactly the way that Targaryens did, but marrying into the same families very frequently, particularly the Karstarks, who were a junior branch of House Stark to begin with. The wolf blood, which was formerly being widely dispersed, has been getting concentrated again over successive generations, until Cregan Stark married Lyanna Stark, and their great-great-grandson, Rickard Stark, marries Lyanna Stark, and they produce Lyanna Stark. Lyanna represents the greatest concentration of wolf blood within a noble bloodline since the Targaryen conquest, possibly even for thousands of years. Lyanna Stark has a problem. And she isn't the only one, because unlike most Tower of Joy theories out there, this one doesn't stop with Rhaegar, Lyanna, and Jon. Other people are at the Tower of Joy as well, and as we will discover, they've all got problems. And we're going to talk about that more in Part 3.